What time is it?
It's 11.
Huh?
It's about 5 to 11.
5 to?
4 to 11.
Good morning.
Good morning,
And good morning.
Good morning.
David.
David is playing you in.
Yes,
Nice.
come on.
But we can't hear it as you
Oh.
because music, you have to change the setting. I don't know how, but there's some
Really?
settings you can
Oh.
change on Zoom so that it picks up music.
Oh,
Otherwise, it does not. I've had this issue.
Okay,
well, the
Several
music had
occasions.
stopped, so,
yes.
But
you know,
The concert
interestingly,
is over
it's just
anyway.
interestingly cannot hear music.
How can that be?
What?
That
I don't
you
know,
can't
there's
hear
some
music,
kind of-
but you can hear other.
On Safaria, it has something to do with the register of the sound or something. I was told there is a change you can make in the settings to do it, but one time, Mordechai Becher and I interviewed Suki Berry for our one of our podcasts, and he was playing. He had a keyboard, and he was playing music to illustrate some points he was making about Jewish music, but you could not hear what he was playing over Zoom. Then I was told there are some changes you can make in Zoom so that you can hear it or project it. But yes, so I don't know why it's fascinating. It is the case.
and hear speech and music.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
it's not
speech
just
you can
music.
hear. Right, yeah. If you do that, you can hear both. But
Oh,
yeah, for some weird reason, you cannot hear music over it. Okay.
Or you can't play music on his.
I wonder why,
You can't.
like Shazam,
He
do you
can't
ever
hear
use
it,
that? How,
If you play,
I
he cannot hear you playing the piano.
No kidding.
Unless they
Right.
change a setting.
there's some setting that you can't hear music. And it's funny because Shazam, record you just.
yeah.
Just my piano or other pianos as well.
Any
No,
music.
No,
just
no,
your-
any music. Like I would do it right
I
now.
was joking.
If I played here, I'm just
Oh,
gonna
if you
play-
played for us, we couldn't hear it either. Huh, okay.
Right. So I'm saying I'm just gonna go to YouTube and pick a song. Let's just pick Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Make it a Billy Joel. Did you see the documentary or going to?
No, is it good? Is it worthwhile?
I loved it. I loved it.
I have to sit down and watch it, because I've heard only good about it.
Yeah.
Well, I was a fan early on.
Yeah, early on, me too, you're right.
Yes.
Even though the critics just tore him apart, but they talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
They tore out Beethoven also.
Yeah.
Can you hear music now?
No,
No.
Twinkle,
Oh,
twinkle, little star.
Can you hear it?
yes,
Can you
A
hear
little-
the music?
little girl sing, oh, the voice.
Hear her voice.
You only hear her voice, right? You don't hear the music.
Right,
But it's music. There's music playing, but I don't know why it is, but it's something to do with
so strange.
Zoom. Yeah.
Okay,
All right. So now where we last ended. Yeah, so we talked about. Oh, I know what we were talking about. Yeah, we were talking about this issue. Of not muzzling an animal. So I mentioned to you that there is connection to voice-activated technology and this mitzvah. So I'm just gonna do here, I'm gonna do this and muzzling. T. All right, so this is from Perplexity. Halacha prohibits the use of voice-activated electronics on Shabbos and also prohibits muzzling an animal while it is threshing, even though the muzzling is done through speech. Both are rooted in a halachic view that speech, when it brings about a significant practical result, is regarded as a direct action. It is forbidden to use voice-activated devices such as Alexa, and I'm not going to say the other word because it will activate the one on my phone, or Google Assistant, to perform tasks that are prohibited on Shabbat. The core reason is that speech, when it triggers an action, like turning on a light or activating an appliance, is halachically considered a maisa, an action, and not just passive speech. This derives from a Talmudic discussion and is the prevailing consensus among contemporary poskim. The Torah states you shall not muzzle an ox when it is threshing. Preventing an animal from eating while working, even by shouting at it or verbally commanding it not to eat, is a Torah prohibition. The Talmud in Bava Metzia 90b discusses whether speech alone constitutes the prohibited muzzling, and the accepted halachic opinion follows Rabbi Yochanan, who says that verbal prevention constitutes a forbidden action as the practical result was achieved via speech. The link between these cases is the halachic classification of consequential speech as action. Tosfot and Bava Metzia and other authorities explain that whenever speech directly brings about a significant outcome, in this case triggering electronics or muzzling an animal, it is not viewed as mere words, but as direct causation and thus fully prohibited on Shabbos or under the law against muzzling, respectively. Contemporary authorities consistently prohibit both activating electronic devices by voice on Shabbos and muzzling animals by word or deed while they are working. There is minimal room for leniency except in extraordinary circumstances. Okay, and the Rambam here had said at the end that he had said, even if he muzzles it with his voice. So that is Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. It's a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Anyways, we apparently paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. Next, negative mitzvah 221. He prohibited us from working the land in the 7th year, and that is his may be exalted, saying, you shall not sow your field. And anyone who transgresses this negative commandment is lashed. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in Shvit, which again there are Mishnayos that are Shvit, which is a tractate. And in the Babylonian Talmud, that's all we have is the Mishnayos. But in the Jerusalem Talmud, there actually is Gemara on this section. The interesting thing about Talmud Yerushalmi is that up until recently, it was not widely studied, even though, again, there's an entire section of of Mishnayos where there isn't Bavli Gemara, so you would think that at least on those we would study the Jerusalem Talmud, but it's just not typically done. Now it's easier to do. There are more commentaries available on it. Plus, there's ArtScroll did a translation. I'm not sure if Steinsaltz did, but ArtScroll did, and so now it's more readily available even for us who are not scholars of the Jerusalem Talmud. The Rambam himself does, on many occasions, derive halacha from the Jerusalem Talmud, so it's not like it's never halachic. There's one tractate in Daf Yomi that we do the Jerusalem Talmud for, and that is Shekalim, the tractate Shekalim, which is about the half shekel tax that is collected before Pesach every year. Okay, so here, this is you're not allowed to work the land. When you're actually learning the halachos, this is something, it's clear that you need more definition of what's called working the land. Like, for instance, what if you're just removing stones from the property? Is that called working the land? What if you're just plowing it? You're not planting it. Is that called working the land? And so those, there's going to be all sorts of qualifications and further explanation to fill in the blanks there. He also prohibited us from doing work on trees in the 7th year, and that is, may he be exalted, saying, and you shall not prune your vineyard. Anyone who transgresses this negative commandment is lashed. The language of the Sifra, which is halachic midrash and bahar, sowing and pruning were in the general category of forbidden labor. So why are they singled out? To compare to them, etc. Just as sowing and pruning are distinct in being labors for field and trees, so too all are such labors. So too are all such labors forbidden on the 7th year. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in Shvi'is. So, like, amongst those things that's discussed with regard to trees is work that might be done in order to preserve the tree from dying. Like, for instance, let's say there was a certain kind of infestation of a beetle or something, and the tree, if left untreated, would die. So are you allowed to treat that tree in order to save it from dying? Could you prune the tree in order to save it from dying? So typically there's a distinction made between that kind of work and the kind of work you just regularly do because you're expecting a crop of produce. So if it's done to preserve the tree, that might be permitted. If it's done just because this is what you do, when, let's say, it's an apple orchard, in the way this is what you do with the tree when you're harvesting apples, so typically that would not be permitted. He prohibited harvesting that which the land grew on its own in the 7th year in the same way that we harvest it every year. And the explanation of that is that we have been prohibited from working the land and from doing work on trees in the sabbatical year, as we have already mentioned. But according to the Torah, we are allowed to eat what was planted in the 6th year, and this is called the aftergrowth in the 7th year. But it's only permissible to harvest it with a modification. And its content is well known, and that is that it is saying the aftergrowth of your harvest, etc., does not mean not to harvest it at all, for you already said, and the rest of the land shall be for you to eat. However, it means that you not harvest it in the way you harvest it every year, but rather harvest it like we harvest something ownerless, meaning to say without readiness, without preparation, as we will explain. So let's see what he says. He prohibited picking the fruit which grew on trees in the 7th year in the same way that we gather the fruits every year. Rather, we do it with modification to show that it is ownerless. And that is his saying, "In the grapes of your untended vines you shall not gather." The explanation appeared in Sifra, again, halachic midrash, "You shall not gather in the usual way of gatherers." From here they said, figs of the 7th year are not to be cut in a muktzah, but they may be cut in an open place. Grapes may not be trodden in a wine press, but they may be trodden in an eating trough. Olives may not be prepared in an olive press or in a small olive press, but one could crush them. The regulations of this commandment and the one before it have already been explained in Shvi'is. So you can see already that it's almost like what we call kalachar yad, like the other side of the hand, when it comes to laws of Shabbos. There are when you have something which is biblically forbidden to do on Shabbos, you have to do it in the way it's normally done and for the purpose it is normally done in order to transgress the biblical commandment. So, for instance, let's say you are plowing. You're plowing the ground. So you're plowing for two primary reasons. One is, and they're both related to eventually growing a crop. You're plowing, perhaps in Israel, they say you plowed twice. You plowed to soften it originally, then you plow again to prepare it for seed. But this plowing needs to be done, in the normal way you would plow, which would be using most likely a plow behind a horse or an ox, or nowadays it would obviously be with machinery. And you'd have some kind of a plow itself, a metal tool that is cutting into the ground. That would be what we would call the normal way of plowing for the normal reason of plowing. But let's say you have a couch outside, it's an outdoor couch, and it's on some dirt in your backyard, and you're trying to move it, let's say, onto the patio. So you drag the couch through the dirt, and then you put it on the patio. So when you drag the couch through the dirt, you created a furrow in the ground. Now, technically, that furrow could look just like a furrow that you had done specifically to grow crops in the ground. But since that was not your intention, and also you didn't do it in the way that it's normally done, so you have not violated the biblical commandment of plowing. Again, even though you got the same result as plowing, but since you did it for a different reason and you did it in an unusual way, that means that you did not violate the biblical commandment. And there's something similar about Shemitah. If you, in this case, the examples he's giving are you're not doing it in its usual way. So if you cut the figs in an open place, or you trod the grapes in a kneading trough, it's not designed for treading grapes so that you can make wine. It's for kneading dough. So it has the same kind of quality that when we typically speak of kalach yad, that you're doing something in a way that's not its normal way. And this is also going to matter when it comes to Shemitah. Also, again, there are certain things you're going to be allowed to do. Like, for instance, you might be allowed to do some kind of pruning on a tree if it's to save the tree. If it's you're not doing it necessarily to help the growth of the fruit that's going to come afterwards. You're just doing it to save the tree. It's possible in a scenario like that would be permitted. So you see, there's like a similar qualification when it comes to Shemitah and Shabbos. He prohibited working the land in the Jew. Yeah,
Rabbi,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
is
Sure.
that related to a shinui that you
Yeah,
might do?
A
on
shinui.
Shabbos?
Yeah, so that
shinui.
word, a kalachariad, that's a shinui. That's right. That means that you're changing from the normal way that you do it. That's exactly the correct term. Yeah. Okay. He prohibited working the land in the Jubilee year, and that is his saying, you shall not sow, like he said about the sabbatical year. So the way it works is there's a cycle of 7 years. This is an agreed upon cycle. So everybody knows when it's beginning. Which, in other words, year number one is year number one for everybody. Year number two is year number two for everybody. It doesn't matter when you bought the land or found the land. It's not a local counting that's only interested that's connected to you, but there is a generally agreed upon counting. There's something called year one, year two, year three, and when it gets to the sabbatical year, it's the sabbatical year for everybody, and the land is supposed to lay fallow. The trees are supposed to be left alone. Then there's a cycle of 7 of these Shemitah cycles. And then after 7 of those, the 50th year is the Jubilee year. And so during the Jubilee year, you are not allowed to work the land in the same way you're not allowed to work it during Shemitah. That's what he's talking about here. And just like the sabbatic year is forbidden, whether regarding working the land or whether regarding working the trees, so too is the Jubilee. And that is why he said, you, plural, shall not sow, about the category that includes land and trees. And one who transgresses this negative commandment is lashed. He prohibited us from harvesting the aftergrowth in the Jubilee year, again, in the way that it's regularly done. And that is his may be blessed, saying, neither shall you reap the aftergrowth, just as is forbidden in the 7th year. Now, so what will happen in Israel is, let's say you have a kibbutz that is practicing the halachas of Shemitah. Nowadays, Shemitah, the Rambam holds that that Shemitah is rabbinic nowadays. It is not biblical, but it still applies in all its details. It's just that it is a rabbinic law. There are certain criteria for it to become biblical again, and we haven't achieved that yet. And so, but all the details are observed. So in Israel, this was something that was done before the state of Israel. I think it was in the 30s even, where they started to sell the land owned by Jews in Israel to they sell it to a Arab, I think. There is a halachic concern about selling land in Eretz Yisrael to idolaters. It's forbidden to sell land in Eretz Yisrael to idolaters. That's why I'm pretty sure they sell the land for Shemitah. They sell it to an Arab. Technically, if a non-Jew owns land, that land does not have to rest. it's only a requirement of Jewish landowners. So if you have land that's owned by a Gentile and they work it, or Jews are hired to work on their land, that's completely permitted, and the produce is permitted. So they did this during that time. Their excuse was that people were very poor, and it would be asking a lot of people when they're that poor to let their land lay fallow. They would have done it if they have to do it, but if there was some way to make life easier for them, they obviously went out of their way to find it. And this is called heter mechira, the sales permit. And so this continues to be done till today. There are many rabbinic figures who feel like the conditions that warranted this sale in the 30s or 40s or even 50s, the conditions that warranted the sale during those times, which is that we're talking about a poor population, are not do not exist anymore. And so it was a severe leniency to allow this in the first place. And therefore, you'll find that there are a lot of rabbinic figures who are against relying on this. If I remember correctly, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef allowed it for Sephardim to still rely on it. I don't remember that for sure. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But for Ashkenazim, most rabbinic figures do not suggest relying on that sale, even though it continues to happen. So what can you do? So let's say you're a kibbutz that is aligned with those rabbis who are against selling the land. So what do you do? Let's say you have oranges. So what you can do is, first of all, you can invite people to pick oranges and then just keep whatever they pick. Like they have those apple orchards throughout the United States where you can go and pick apples. Now, in those cases, you pay for the apples that you pick. But in the case of the Shemitah produce, you wouldn't they wouldn't have to pay for it because it's not owned by anybody. It's just as much their oranges as it is anybody else's oranges when they pick them. So that would be one way, is you just invite the public to come onto your kibbutz and pick the fruit that's there, and everybody would just leave with whatever they could use. Another option, which I remember being done when I was a student in Israel, there was a Shemitah when I was a student. I've been in Israel on several different occasions when it was Shemitah. But the earliest one, when we were Bachrim, I remember that you used to be able to get these bags of oranges. They'd be like 50 pounds, these large bags with like 25 kilos, something like that, which would be around a little more than 50 pounds. And they could only sell it for the cost of packaging it and delivering it. So you got like, I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it would be like 50 pounds of oranges and it would cost like $5 or maybe $10, something like that. So it also is an issue with esrogim when for the sukkahs after the esrogim are a problem, the sukkahs after Shemitah. The way it works is with vegetables, you immediately count them as Shemitah vegetables when they're picked. No, yeah, when they're picked. So if you pick them during the Shemitah year, which is after Rosh Hashanah until the next Rosh Hashanah of the seventh year what would be year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, year 7. So it's the 7th year. So yeah, so for vegetables, so let's say the vegetables were planted 2 months before Shemitah, and now they're ready to pick, and it's after Rosh Hashanah. So when you pick them, from the time you pick them, that's when they're forbidden. So uh, again, the owner of those fields is not the owner of those, let's say, cucumbers, because once it's Shemitah, everybody has the same access. So he or she can go pick them if you want to and bring them home, but you can't harvest them and keep them and sell them. You could just pick what you need and take it home, and so could other people. So that goes by when you pick them. Fruit does not go by when you pick it. Fruit goes by I think when the flower budded on the stem. Once the flower budded on the stem, I'm pretty sure that's when it starts. So as long as that happened during Shemitah, it's considered a Shemitah fruit. And so even though you may not pick the esrog till after Rosh Hashanah, and let's say it's now the 8th year, so after Rosh Hashanah is no longer Shemitah, but that fruit on the tree is still considered Shemitah fruit because it began to grow before the 7th year ended. So that's what one of the ways you do it that is different than the rest of the year is that you're not harvesting with big trucks. You're not harvesting with with large machinery and packaging and all that kind of stuff. But you're going in for smaller bunches, and somehow it has to be made available to the public without them actually paying for the produce. Again, you could pay, it's sort of like paying for shipping and handling. You can have that where they're charging you for the effort to gather it and for the effort to package it and for the effort to deliver it. They're not charging you for the orange per se or the apple per se, but they're charging you for the shipping and handling. So that's where there can be a bit of a loophole, and some people might be tempted to take advantage of that to cover more than just the costs of shipping and handling, but it wouldn't be permitted. Okay, so what else do we have here?
Rabbi, can I
Yeah.
ask if a non-Jew can work the land and that seventh land, then it's not about the land being left fallow?
No,
because
he
has to own it.
can't work your land. He can
Oh,
only
he can
work
his own. Oh, I see. He
his
can't.
land.
Your
If
land has to remain fallow. Okay.
Right. If you own it, he can't work it. But his land he can work. So if you sold him your land, now it's his land and technically not subject to Shemitah. You could actually be
I
hired.
thought it was the land of Eretz Yisrael that was supposed to have Shemitah.
Yeah, the land of Eretz Yisrael is supposed to be entirely in the hands of Jews.
Come back.
So
Come back.
I guess there is a ideal where it would end up that all of the land would lay fallow, but technically it only applies to the land of that is Jewish owned land. Here, as we're going to see here, let's see what we say here.
And a lot of philosophy.
Somebody's here.
What did you say? A lot of what?
What?
I said it'll knock a lot of theology out if you don't say that between the sanctity of the land and whatever.
Right, but this, by the way, this also applies to Trumos and Maasros and other kinds of things. Like if the land's owned by a Gentile, he's not obliged to give the tithes. He doesn't have to leave the corner for the fields. He doesn't have to. All those laws do not apply to a Gentile who owns land in Eretz Yisrael. As we're going to see, look here, this is the absolute next law. He prohibited us not to sell our land in the land of Israel as a permanent sale, and that is his saying, the land shall not be sold in perpetuity. The regulations of this commandment have been explained in Arachin. So how they get around that here, so let's just see what they say here. Okay. Two, 228. This is, by the way, a separate prohibition from lo tichanem, which we saw before was the prohibition of selling land to idolaters. That's how it's generally understood. Okay. All right. So again, this is the first reading of this thing from Perplexity. At some point you'd have to go and look at all the sources just to make sure, but this is just, we'll call it back of the envelope kind of thinking. So the Rambam in his Sefer Mitzvot and Mishnah Torah writes that it is forbidden to sell land in Israel in perpetuity based on Leviticus 25:23. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. This prohibition is specifically about selling the permanent ownership of the land, as all land sales among Jews in ancient times would revert to the Jubilee at the Jubilee year, thus preventing a sale forever. The Ramban and other commentators interpret this commandment as also forbidding selling land in Israel to non-Jews, since non-Jews are not bound by the laws of Yovel, meaning such sales would in effect be permanent. However, many halachic authorities distinguish between pagans and Muslims, since Islam is strictly monotheistic, does not fall under the category of idolatry. Thus, a number of authorities, including Rabbi Ovadia Yosef and Rabbi Shaul Yisraeli, were lenient regarding selling or leasing land in Israel to Muslims. There is a long precedent for such leniencies in cases where economic or other mitigating needs exist. Some authorities, such as Chazon Ish, maintain that extreme cases, such as significant financial loss, or in situations where the non-Jew already resides in the land, sale or lease might be permitted out of necessity. Conversely, others maintain strict prohibitions, especially if the buyer is not a ger toshav, which means a non-Jew living in Israel who accept the Noahide laws. But practical rulings often take into account the complexities of modern Israeli society and the realities of land ownership. Okay. And there's a little bit more there. We'll talk, we'll go on. We'll start with this tomorrow, just to give this a better treatment. And I look forward to doing that. All right, be well, guys.
Yeah, be well. See you tonight, maybe.
Yes, Bezrat
Okay.
Hashem. All right, be well. Bye-bye.